Hey, this is Robin from the Ocean, and you're listening to the Progcast.
Welcome back to yet another episode of the Progcast, and it's also the second episode this week. There's so much going on in the prog world, so many important new albums coming out, and today is the release day of the new, long-awaited album from the Ocean Collective, and it's actually the second part of their, where do I have the album name? The long album name here. Phanerozoic concept, Phanerozoic II, Mesozoic and Cenozoic. And with me for this episode, calling from his well-deserved holidays is founding member Robin. And I'm super excited to have him here on the show. Hi, Robin. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you, man?
I'm fine. I was actually last night. I was at a big show, at the first big show after lockdown here in Munich, and it was Ginger and Ghost, Iris from Denmark, and Arius. So it was actually all in all the fourth show I think I saw after lockdown, but it was the first from a big international band. The other shows were smaller shows from local bands. So yeah, it's great to see live music coming back slowly but surely, at least here in Germany.
Was that at limited capacity, out of curiosity?
Yes, of course. So you played the backstage venue in Munich probably a lot of times.
Times, yeah.
So the shows from the small local bands were actually in the Werk, in the biggest venue, which usually has a capacity of 1,200 around, and now with this seated limited capacity, it's 200. But they have a new outdoor area with a kind of tent ceiling, which holds seated capacity of 400, and that's where Ginger were playing. And on Saturday, I'm gonna go there again, and I'm gonna see Long Distance Calling.
So. Seated capacity of 400 in the big room, right?
In the new outdoor arena, which is located behind the backstage area, the backstage venue area. It's always so confusing talking about the backstage venue, because I'm not actually talking about the backstage rooms, the green rooms and stuff, but about the venue.
Venue called backstage, yeah.
Yes. Anyway, let's talk about the Ocean. You guys have a new album out now, and as I said, it has another long and complicated name, Phanerozoic II, Mesozoic, Cenozoic, and it is, of course, the second part of the Phanerozoic concept, and the first part was released in 2018, and it is actually those two parts. They kind of they are picking off where you left off, more or less after the 2007 album Precambrian. Then you had the two heliocentric and anthropocentric albums, which dealt with another subject, and of course the Pelagial album in 2013. But now you came back to your paleontologic roots, so to speak, with the new album, with the two Phanerozoic albums. That kind of, yeah. Would you say that they are kind of successors to Precambrian?
Well, yes, as you already said, they kind of continue where Precambrian left off. both conceptually and somehow musically as well. A lot of the songs I was writing for the first part of Phanerozoic, when I wrote them, I realized they have a bit of a Precambrian vibe. The same type of orchestral tracks as on the Proterozoic half, the longer half of Precambrian. And so that was what initially, even put it back in my mind that there is still a void to fill between Precambrian and heliocentric, both musically and conceptually. Musically, heliocentric was a new beginning for us somehow as a band. It was the first record with Loic on vocals.
Yes.
It was the first record with predominantly clean vocals in general, which a lot of people had a problem with back then. So it was really like a new start of the band, and also a lot of older members quit at that time, and we had this Swiss people coming into the band. So it was quite a ways from where we left off with Precambrian musically. And so musically, we wanted to make a record that bridges kind of like this gap between Precambrian and heliocentric. And conceptually, the missing gap or that void was the Phanerozoic Eon, which is a time period that started 541 million years ago and still carries on until the present tense. Heliocentric kind of started where humanity came in, so at the very end of the Phanerozoic, basically. So there was also this conceptual gap between those records, and that's why we decided some 12 years after the release of Precambrian to go back and make another record that kind of continues where we let it rest back then. Yeah. And that's what these two albums are. And musically, Phanerozoic I, like I said, has a bit of that Precambrian vibe. But throughout the course of the record, and then especially with Phanerozoic II, it develops into a very different direction. And it doesn't really conclude with where heliocentric starts, but actually maybe it does. We haven't really tried it yet. It would be interesting to really put all these records in a succession now and see how it feels to play Firmament, the first track of heliocentric, after Holocene, the last track of Phanerozoic II. That's how it was meant to be. And maybe one day we will play a long 6-hour show where we play all these records in one go. Maybe not.
that sounds like something curated especially for a Roadburn Festival or something like that.
That could work within such a context, yes.
Yeah, I actually discovered the ocean with heliocentric, and it was fortunate for me because I was still not that into the more extreme side of metal in general. So I actually did see you guys playing at the backstage venue with all those years ago with Opeth.
Oh wow!
So that was still with the two old singers, so to speak. Yep. And
that was in 2008, actually, if I'm not mistaken, 2008 or 2009.
That could be. That was like where I was fresh in Munich. I just moved to Munich, and it was at that time. Opeth was kind of the only band with growls I would really dig, and actually in 2016 was kind of the turning point for me personally. So I actually with a band that's more or less connected with the ocean, because you guys are gonna tour together. Hypnose was my gateway drug to more extreme stuff, and
great band.
Yeah, absolutely. So the second time I saw you guys live was with Pelagial, actually at the Prog Power Festival, where you played an instrumental show. And the very first time I got to see you guys with Loic then was actually with Leprous last year only. So it's been almost 10 years after Heliocentric was and Anthropocentric were released that I finally got to see you guys with Loic.
Right.
And hopefully, of course, next year again, you guys have a massive tour booked and announced. So fingers crossed that will go forward as well. How are you feeling about this in these uncertain times?
Well, obviously, everything is very much in the limbo right now. But we kind of knew that when we announced the tour. The tour has been booked for a long time, and we decided to put tickets on sale and announce it, knowing that we have to assess the situation as it develops over the course of the coming weeks and months. And at this stage, I have to say it's quite likely that the tour will have to be postponed. The problem is just that although there's these limited capacity shows, starting to happen, as you mentioned earlier, in Germany and in some other European countries as well, for a lot of venues that don't have government funding, it's just not financially feasible to only be allowed to sell half of the tickets. And we still have the same costs with our bus and everything, so we can't accept lower fees either. So it's questionable. And if only it's a tour of 30 dates, if like 5 or 10 shows cannot happen or can only happen at limited capacity and thus won't be financially viable anymore, then that will affect the whole tour. So there's a big risk of it being postponed. But for the moment, we're still confident. We're still crossing our fingers that most venues on the tour will find a solution. And at least in Germany, it looks promising. I spoke to our German agent today, and I know that Leipzig wants to do the show. I know that Hamburg wants to do the show. And Festsaal in Berlin also has a limited capacity setup. So I can't really say right now. I'm crossing my fingers it will work out. If not, then we have a backup routing in place already for June.
Right.
Pretty much the exact same cities in the same order. I really don't know how our agent managed to pull that off because
crazy.
Everything is getting postponed now, and next year is going to be an absolute clusterfuck of hundreds of bands wanting to release albums and tour all at the same time. But he made it work. So we have this backup routing in place. So in case January doesn't happen, then the same tour with the same bands in the same cities will happen in June, and tickets will remain valid until then. So sooner or later, we will be able to tour with the record.
That's awesome. That sounds promising. It's always good to have a backup plan in your pocket, right?
Yes, that's absolutely necessary in these days and age.
Actually, talking once more about Ginger and their tour, their small tour they did. It was the last gig last night here in Munich. They also played 2 shows in Switzerland, and apparently there they didn't have any distancing measures in place or something. So it was very, very interesting. But as you said, it's nothing is for certain in these times, and we just have to wait and see and keep our fingers crossed.
Exactly. That's all we can do anyways.
I'm definitely looking forward to that tour. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a huge fan of Hypnose as well. And it's gonna be the first the Ocean headlining show for me since a long time, since the Pelagial show at Prog Power, which was also quite special as it was the instrumental gig with Pelagial.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Very epic. But let's go back to the new album and dig a little bit into that. I think I read that you guys actually already recorded the drums for Phanerozoic II with at the same time as you were recording them for Phanerozoic I. Is that correct?
That's right. We recorded drums for both records in Iceland in early 2018. And by that time, all the material for both records was already written. And not entirely finalized, but I'd say about 90% written. So we tracked drums for both records together. Then we focused on finishing the first part first, which took us a couple of months. And then the album was released, the first album in late 2018. And then all of 2019, we've been on tour. We had a pretty intense year there, starting off in India, Australia, and New Zealand. Then we did a European tour, then European summer festivals. Then we did a tour of Russia, went to places like Kazakhstan, Armenia, and Georgia for the first time, and then Japan. And then we did this tour with Leprous that we already spoke about. Yes. And so we barely had time to finish the second part. Drums were already tracked, but we still had to record guitars, vocals, and a lot of other extra instruments. And we kind of made that work in between these tours, but it was a bit of a patchwork because there was just not much time last year. So yeah, somehow I'm not complaining about being home this year, to be honest, for a while. You know, it feels good to have a break because last year was really intense, and it gave us some time to focus on some other projects that we just never had the time to do, really. And so we're taking a lot of positive things out of all the bullshit that's been happening this year, actually.
That's great. Yeah, now that you mention it, actually, I remember that I saw you guys last year at Summer Breeze Festival, but you know, such a huge festival. There's so many bands that you see.
Right.
So it kind of slipped my mind, but that was a quite hectic day for me, running around getting interviews with Joel from Soen, and then running over from your show to see. I think Lepers was playing.
They were also playing. They were
Yeah.
lost on the main stage. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You just mentioned the recording process that was a little bit scattered between all those tours. What about the lineup for Phanerozoic II? Were there any changes, or is the main band still the same from Phanerozoic II? I mean, you guys are also known as the Ocean Collective. So is it? How's the lineup looking?
It's still the same. Yes, it has been the same for the past 5 years, more or less, and it's completely stable now. The core of the band is fixed. There is no more collective in the core members that are on stage, but we still have a lot of people around the band that are very important for what we do that you won't always necessarily see on stage. Like, for example, of course, our crew, or lighting guy Sean Willikins, who really knows the songs in and out and plays keyboard on the lighting desk. So he's kind of like an offstage band member. Our sound guy as well, Craig Murray, who does all of videos. Also the 2 Phanerozoic video clips that we've already released. And Martin Quamme, who did the artwork ever since Precambrian for us. And all these people, they are part of this larger pool of artists and contributors that we refer to as the collective. But it doesn't really mean that within the band we have rotating members. We also have a lot of extra musicians that we continue to work with. Thomas Liljedal, for example, is the 4th time that he appears on one of our records. Our cello player Dalai, that we've been doing a lot of tours with, but she's not a fixed band member. So there's all these people that are associated with the band and quite important for what we do artistically. And that is what the collective term refers to mostly. The core band lineup is fixed and has been for a while. And that's very good because, we're just all really good friends and have a lot of respect for each other and what we do as musicians and as people. And that's really important. And I think there was definitely some difficult times between us in the past, especially between Loic and me. But we've all overcome that, and right now we just really appreciate being in this band and everything that it does for us, and that it allows us to travel to amazing places and get paid for playing shows, which is the greatest thing in the world. And I think it's also a matter of growing up and realizing that it's sometimes important to take a step back rather than to always fight your interest through. And I think we have all learned that, and that's why the spirit in the band is now better than ever. It's a really strong lineup, and we're all really good friends, and that is the most important thing after all.
That sounds great. That sounds like I want to be in this band with you. But you mentioned a lot of guest musicians or contributing musicians. What kind of instruments did you add to the normal rock lineup, so to speak?
For Phanerozoic II, right in the opening track, Triassic, there are some very weird instruments that we recorded in Armenia last year on tour with a traditional flutes and woodwinds player that we met in Yerevan, where we spent a week. And that was a really cool experience. The song has a bit of an oriental vibe anyways, so we've been wanting to record like a weird instrument over it. And we tried with a saf player, which is like a Turkish type of sitar in Berlin. But it wasn't really working out. It didn't really fit so well. And in the end, we decided to discard it. And then when we got to Armenia, I was talking to our promoter over there, about traditional Armenian music, and he happened to know this guy. And he came to our gig in Yerevan just an hour before Doors, between soundcheck and Doors. And we initially just wanted to test the waters and have him improvise over this part a little bit. But it turned out to be so awesome, and he really knew exactly what we were looking for, that we ended up recording the final takes for that song there in Yerevan between soundcheck and Doors. That's what ended up on the records. Actually, a couple of different takes. There's different takes that you hear on the instrumental version as on the vocal version. Because some of these parts were colliding with the vocals that we had over the parts, so we could bring more of those in on the instrumental version. But on the vocal version, you also hear those flutes all across the song.
That sounds
so that was one thing.
That sounds very intriguing. Really... so I'm definitely gonna check out the instrumental version once it's out, as I just have the version with vocals as a promo pre-listening here. Sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to say I think it's definitely worth to check out the instrumental versions, as they're always super interesting. And the cool thing is that you always get them from the ocean, like as a standard.
Right. We decided to release our records as parallel instrumental versions a couple of years ago already. I think it's always just an interesting different perspective on the music, because as soon as you take the vocals away, you will realize a lot of things that you otherwise just wouldn't pay attention to. That's just because our listening conditions are so much programmed on paying attention to the lead vocals that, as soon as you take them away, you will realize a whole bunch of other things that are there in the music, but you just wouldn't notice. And that's why we've always been doing that. And our instrumental versions are not just mixes with muted vocals. They are actually different mixes. So you will hear different synths, different instruments in certain parts, and we will bring up certain instruments that we can't really raise in the vocal versions because they would be conflicting with the vocals or taking too much attention from them. But then in the instrumentals, we bring them up. So you actually get different mixes, not just the same mix with muted vocals. So it's worthy and interesting checking out and paying attention to that a little bit.
I'm definitely gonna do that. But we were talking about. I interrupted you there. We were talking about the added instruments that are on Phanerozoic II, and you started out with the Armenian guy playing these woodwinds. What else can we hear?
Let me think. There's lots of brass on Jurassic Cretaceous that we already recorded in the same session as the brass for Phanerozoic I. I think on Silurian, there's some brass parts. So we recorded all that together in Berlin with a horns and trumpet player and a trombone player. I think that's the only track on the second part of the record where you hear that Jurassic Cretaceous, the first half of Jurassic. Other than that, lots of analog synths. It's our guy Peter, who's been a band member since Phanerozoic I. He used to be our lighting guy before that for 4 years, and then we kind of decided that we need him in the band more than on the lighting desk. And I think his synths really bring a new depth and new level to the sound of the band. And particularly on this record, you really hear that. It's not just extras added in the background. It's actually things that are there all the time, and they, like his moogs, color the tone of our guitars. You only realize that when you take them away, but there's something playing all the time, sometimes very subtle, sometimes really in the front, and that has become a quite important element of our sound with these two records, I think.
Yeah, I can absolutely hear that the importance, the growing importance of those synths in the sound of the ocean. You mentioned your artwork guy already, and you've been working with him for a long time. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the creation of the artwork for Phanerozoic II.
Well, it's been quite a journey, to be honest. But that's always like that with Martin. We have really cool creative relationship where it's usually it usually works that I first tell him about my initial idea and the concept as a whole, and then he comes back to me with suggestions and ideas and first drafts, and then we just bounce ideas off each other and eventually develop the whole thing. And that's what we've been doing here as well. We wanted to continue to work with these die cuts that we already had on Precambrian. Back then, we had these kind of lava bubble shaped cutouts through which you could see an underlaying layer of cardboard, which had these images of lava printed on it. And then with Phanerozoic I, we also used die cuts, but this time you would see images of lush green vegetation, coming through these die cuts. And in the case of Phanerozoic II, we also used die cuts again, and this time the theme is these two celestial bodies on course of collision, referencing that Jurassic Cretaceous extinction event, which is kind of like the central theme of not only the Mesozoic half, but like the record as a whole. So that was the starting point. We wanted to work with those die cuts again, and here, we've kind of approached it in a very basic way. We wanted to have like a really iconic type of logo this time, something that you can reduce to just one color and print and get tattooed and have just like a really recognizable element. And that is the result of that is the most simple thing. It's basically just like two circles, like a large and a small one, that are representing these two celestial bodies, the asteroid and Earth, if you want so, or whatever, set on course for collision. And those are seen through a larger circle. So all these circular shapes are something that became a central theme of the artwork. And that also refers to the idea of eternal recurrence, which is kind of the central topic of both Phanerozoic records. It's the idea that things happen over and over again in infinite time in history. So kind of a cyclical concept of time as opposed to a linear concept of time. And that is something that we already discussed with the opening track of Phanerozoic I, Cambrian, his original text of Nietzsche, where he talks about the idea of eternal recurrence. So it's something that has been there from the beginning of Phanerozoic I, and that we continue to develop, embedded and woven into the fabric of this geological time concept on the second part of the record. So that's pretty much it. Two circles are what kind of makes up the whole artwork. And a lot of times when you try to find something really simple and iconic, that is the most difficult thing. And it was the same here. Like we've been just bouncing ideas off each other for a long time, and a lot of things got discarded. But eventually we came up with what became this artwork now, and I'm really happy with it. Oh, and on the inside, of course, should also mention that. So when you look at the front cover or the outside, you see these two colliding circles in shades of like brown and rocky colors, and then you open the gatefold of the vinyl version or the CD version, and then on the inside it's all ice, and you also have these circular cutouts, but this time you see ice through, which is referring to the Pleistocene and Holocene ice ages. So that's also cool because it comes as a surprise when you open the record, then all of a sudden you have a totally different color scheme on the inside and very different images. That was also an idea we wanted to try out here, and it came out really well.
Yeah, that sounds very, very intriguing, and I love how you guys always, extend the concept to the artwork and the whole package. And the Ocean is also known for expanding their concepts to the artwork, and always you guys always have these super awesome vinyl editions. So that's a really cool really cool expanding the not stopping with thinking things through with the concept when it comes to the artwork, but it's like a whole package, and
that's where the fun begins. Yeah, we've always put a lot of attention to that, and I don't know, I've always seen that as a great challenge, and I'm equally interested in visual art as I am in music. So it would make sense to stop there or leave things up to chance. And with Martin Quanner, I've really found a soulmate there as well, because he's really willing to experiment and try things and work with different printing techniques or materials. And like this time we used a paper with an embossed structure that is has like a stone structure, so the paper looks like stone, and it was incredibly difficult. We had to make tests with it because it's very thick material. So they had to test if they can fold it to become gatefolds without it cracking on the crease folds and all that. And we had to make lots of tests, and it was really expensive. And in the end, it's extremely nerdy business, but the outcome is just phenomenal. It's something that you can't just see. You can touch it and feel it, and it's just a really nice and special product. And Martin is like me there. He's totally obsessed with different materials and trying out things and trying to push boundaries with physical music packaging, which I think is very important if you still want to sell records as a physical thing. Then you got to give people a good reason to buy it, not to stream it or to download it, which of course is also fine. But with Pelagic, we're mostly selling vinyl, and that's why we're trying to really make them stand out.
You just mentioned very nerdy business. Speaking of nerdy business, actually a couple of days ago there was a very different news item releasing through your channels, and that was the news that New Fossil was named after the band, The Ocean.
That's right.
You want to tell us quickly how this happened?
It happened because two scientists from Luxembourg that are huge fans of the band have decided to give us that honor and to name a newly discovered fossil species after us, after the band. It's a brittle star from the Pliocene era, so from the Cenozoic, basically, second part of the record, and they found it in deep sea sediments and realized that it was a new species unknown to science. And because they love the band and because we always have these paleontological album concepts and themes, they decided to name the species or this new fossil species after us. And that's, of course, really cool. And we made a little video about it and posted it yesterday. And I'm very happy about this extremely nerdy business, as you call it.
I would say with a history like yours with those records, it was only a matter of time that somebody would name something after you.
Right.
You actually, when I look at the band history, is it true that you founded the band in 2000? So it would be the 20th anniversary of the band, right?
I'm afraid that's right. Yes, we are dinosaurs of the German metal scene. Yes.
So what we are doing with the Progcast is that we always compile a companion playlist, and of course I will put the singles from the new album in there. But we also always put kind of like a best of on top of it, so that people who are new to the band can kind of discover the band in reverse chronological order. So maybe you would like to give us your favorite songs from the previous records.
Oof, like any record, any Ocean record, or what's the deal?
Yes.
Oof, okay. Well, let's see. Okay, there should probably be a track of Heliocentric in it. Let it be Firmament then. There should be a track of Anthropocentric in it. Let it be something completely different. Wille zum Untergang. There should be a Precambrian track in it. Let's make that Orosirian for the Great Blue Cold Now Reigns. There should be an Aeolian track in it. Killing the Flies.
Okay.
And then, of course, a Pelagial track. Let's do Let Them Believe. And maybe another one. Maybe The second track, the real opening track, Mesopelagic, Into the Uncanny. And then of Phanerozoic I, let's do Cambrian and Permian, the Great Dying. That's probably way more than you need anyways, right?
No, that's fine. I mean, it's a prog
Okay.
playlist. It can be a little longer. And on top of that, to finish off our nice conversation here, I always love to ask my interview guests about their listening, what they are listening to right now, and we call this section "What's in Your Walkman." So, do you have any recommendations that songs that you've been listening to a lot in the last days or weeks?
Oof, a lot, but I have to look into my Spotify playlist. You still there?
Yes.
Okay. So I've been listening to a lot of surf lately, actually. Bambi Molesters, Joe and Eddie, Martin Denny, the Meteors, things like that. Satan's Pilgrims, Dick Dale. That's in my immediate last playlist. I've also been discovering a bunch of cool new bands that I have put in my own playlist. Let me double check. What's last here? Well, there was the new Mastodon track. I've been listening to the last Cloudkicker record, which is really, really good. I've been listening to the last Lingua Ignota record, the new Old Man Gloom record that came out this year. Scorpions.
That's playlist.
Cluster.
Playlist is quickly becoming very, very eclectic.
It is. But also been listening to lots of crowd the last couple of weeks. So Cluster, Faust,
okay,
Tangerine Dream.
Nice.
You know, I've been digging a bit into this, like this band Nectar, into this old 60s German crowd scene. There's lots of interesting things. Oh, and the new Motorpsycho record, which is absolutely spectacular, I think. Really, really good.
Right. I totally forgot that they have a new record out. I will check that out. Just
and late in the evening, lots of Lustmord.
Okay, just when we're finished here, just write me a little list and I will add them to the playlist. I also have a few recommendations for this "What's in Your Walkman" section, and I kind of try to match the ocean spirit or the ocean sound. So that would be the new release or the new re-release of the debut album from A Swarm of the Sun called Zenith, and that is spectacular post-metal there. I really love the band. I fell in love with...
I can tell you that we just made an agreement with them. We are going to re-release The Rifts and the Woods on vinyl in January.
Oh my goodness, that's great news. I actually have the Rifts white vinyl, I think. That's the record that made me like fall in love with them. Absolutely
incredible record,
amazing band, and kind of in a similar vibe. Second recommendation from me this time would be from a Munich band called Pictures from Nadira. They have one album out called Pictures from Nadira, and the last track is also a 9-minute track called Nautilus, which is, of course, fitting for the ocean theme here, and also fits musically very, very well. Then actually today, also through Pelagic Records, I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a new single from pg.lost called E22.
Yes.
Which I just checked out before we had I jumped into Skype to talk to you. And last but not least, a 20-minute song or 17-minute song, a little bit older, but it just came back to my mind that I want to listen to this album again today, and it's from a super group of salt called called OSI, Office of Strategic Influence. And their debut album was released in 2003. It features Mike Portnoy on drums, Kevin Moore on keyboards, Jim Matthias on the guitar, and they have actually on the bonus disc they have this the thing that never was, a 17-minute long track with the riffs that didn't make the actual album. And it's just a nice way to round up this playlist. I think it fits very well musically. So yeah, that's it's gonna be an epic playlist. That's for sure.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, Phanerozoic II is out now. We all hope to see you guys live again next year, either in January or in June. Fingers crossed for that. All the best with the release of the record. Thank you for taking the time and talking to us here on the Progcast, Robin.
Of course. Thank you for your time.
And now, as always, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and listen to great music.
The Progcast is a production of Stewis Media and is presented by the Prog Space. It is produced by Randy M. Salo, Janine Stango-Lewis, Blake Lewis, Kai Metzner, and Dario Albrecht. Our theme music is by This Is Not an Elephant.